I'm Dean Newland, and welcome to Leadovation. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. This podcast is dedicated to the art and science of innovative leadership. Through insightful interviews with industry experts, I bring you cutting-edge strategies and experiences of innovative leadership, helping you think differently, act strategically, and achieve remarkable results. Join me as I provide insights and tools that empower you to make smarter decisions, forge meaningful relationships. Welcome to Leadovation. How many of you listening today value innovation? Maybe you even have the word innovation in your company's list of core values. Some of you may even have it in your company's name. But here's a real question. How many of you actually have a repeatable process for innovation? Too often, innovation is treated like an abstract concept, something that we say we value but struggle to implement in a structured, sustainable way. Well, today we're going to change all that. Joining me on my podcast is Matt Leta, an expert in innovation and organizational change. He spent years interviewing leaders, studying what works, and refining practical frameworks to help companies turn ideas into action. He's also the author of Leap, an innovation guidebook that provides a clear step-by-step process for identifying and implementing ideas that are innovative within any organization. In our conversation, we also explore how companies and businesses can cultivate a culture of innovation, overcome innovation fatigue, and shift from sporadic ideas to a structured system that dives into real change. We also tackle an important distinction. Are you innovating or are you inventing, and why does that even matter? Matt Leta on the Leadovation podcast. Well, Matt, it's great to have you on the show, and I would like to kick us off with your first book. I know you got a second book underway, which we'll talk about here shortly. First book called The Leap Guide. And you mentioned the first step of this four-step process, being able to identify opportunities for innovation within your organization. And when I first read that, I started thinking, all right, that's a great idea. But then I asked myself, then how do you know within your own organization where there are innovative opportunities if we all know that we kind of walk around with a certain amount of bias, there's a certain amount of blind spots. I don't know what we don't know. I'm thinking about my own company, like, well, I kind of have some idea where we could innovate, things I've been thinking about, but there's probably a vast amount of other things that I don't even know where I could innovate and how technology, AI could actually help me. So from your perspective and your writing and your understanding, how does a company know where to find those opportunities for innovation?
Wow, you hit it on the nail right out on the outset.
I tried. That's good.
Yeah,
We're off to a good start then.
Yeah, this is it's literally, actually, if you were to simplify the point of this entire exercise in the book, it's sort of this and then communication. So there's like the finding and the communication kind of, really. And because they allow you to unlock culture of innovation, they allow you to actually action those opportunities, and they allow you to make everyone believe they're an innovator and therefore contribute, and feel like they are part of change and therefore not against change. And I can talk to that part more. But to answer your question directly, it doesn't work in most cases to have that one person, let's say, chief innovation officer or an innovation lab, to drive innovation that is meant to drive organizational change. They can come up with new products, new things for customers and so on very often. But when it comes to actually driving change within the organization, this kind of like centralized approach just doesn't work, and is far more expensive and than approaching it, inviting everyone. And now the cool thing about, inviting the team to share the opportunities, because most of the time they already know, and they probably don't realize that, but they already know because they are in the trenches, right? And so actually it is hard, like you said yourself, like when you've got the team, it is hard for you to exactly know what's needed, but these guys know. They're there, and they will have their biases. They have their agenda, their politics if it's a bigger organization and whatnot. But they will have their own kind of things they want to push forward and solve. And I think importantly, and I'll come back to that, they have things that they don't realize they actually would want to solve, or not yet realize. And now, if you invite people from diverse backgrounds and you form a group, let's say, of 5 people, which is what I recommend because it seems to be the best testing size of a group to run this exercise with in a kind of effective enough manner. And then you ideally bring people from different levels of the organization doing different things. And for every, of course, organization and department, that's a different mix. But you would want to have a diverse crowd there, and diverse primarily in terms of like what they do at the company. And ideally like people on kind of opposite sides of the fences often, like I don't know, there is finance and tech, and there is someone in kind of general management, or what would that be, and then they go through this first stage, and the first step of this process is the longest. It's L for leap, L for locate, which is like the first letter of the 4-step process in leap, and it's the longest. And it invites people to sort of come up with a theme that they're going to be working around. That, like, let's say, let's solve operational efficiency because we're struggling with X, and they kind of unite around a theme or 5 themes, and they start coming up, bringing those opportunities. And immediately there will be, in most cases, from what I observed over the years, the following will happen. Some people will get excited and will come up with some ideas. Some people will hate the idea and they will think it's a new kind of flavor of the month initiative, and they will have zero buy-in and they will kind of struggle. They might not even try not to show up or not bring anything for the first 2 weeks. But eventually, when they start seeing others bring ideas, they will warm up to it, and that's why it's the longest step, because it repeats 5 times for 5 weeks, and eventually everyone kind of gets bought into it. And eventually, each person brings on average like 5 different opportunities. Now, most people kind of, unless they're like super on it and super creative and super, already focused on improving your organization, they don't actually have, or they don't realize they have that many ideas for improvement, right? So they will have maybe like 2 or 3. And that's the question at first, like you come up with 2 or 3, then you refine them as a group. And then the second round comes, and they are invited to come up with more ideas. And this is where I come back to what I kind of parked earlier. They, in essence, need to start digging deeper, because it's not the obvious ideas, right? So like, let's say that like the week 4, week 5 is when you start getting like the new fresh ideas out of people, and opportunities for improvement. And those opportunities can be like known problems, or they can be ideas for kind of for growth. There could be new ways to use a new tool that's being onboarded, or AI in general, or whatever that would be.
I love it. So I was thinking as you were talking, Matt, that many, many years ago, probably when I was a kid, I heard a story about an innovative idea that came from an employee who worked for a shampoo company. And the idea was just simply put on the directions, rinse and repeat again. Something simple as that, and that something like doubled their sales by just having that. Now, does it really need you to wash your hair a second time? No, but it was a great idea, and it boosted sales, right? And that came from rank and file people, like what you're talking about. And I think I really like this idea about getting people involved who are there doing the work to create these ideas. And I think that, as I understand, when we think about engagement probably is a way of defining, that extra effort that you put into your work outside of the bare minimum, because 1, you believe in the work, and 2, you think that what you're doing can actually affect the outcome. So by getting people engaged in these conversations, I think is a great idea. I do find that sometimes we get innovation fatigue. Like, innovation is almost like a cousin of change, right? And who wants to move my cheese again? And the world is so full of change, and especially in this day and age right now, with respect to the world we live in today. What is it, March, 2024? There's a lot going on, and people kind of want to, sometimes it's like going, hey, you can innovate all you want, man. I think that's a great idea, but what I want to do is get a good night's sleep. What I want to do is have a day that feels like the day before. So How big of a barrier is this fatigue for innovation that you run into, and do you allow for that? Do you
Yeah,
say, hey, you know what, let's take a break for a few days, let's don't go into this because we don't have the
yeah.
mental, emotional, spiritual bandwidth to get into this? Or do you say, no, let's keep going? And then how do you keep going? How do you manage that innovator's fatigue?
Yeah, I think I'll start from kind of like where we are, right? So there, it's kind of like, you know, times are changing faster and faster, right? Markets are changing. I think everyone right now would be, accurate in saying that it is very hard to predict what's around the corner, right?
Uh-huh.
And that is only accelerating. So we used to be able to have 5-year plans, then we had 1-year plans. Currently, like, can you actually have a firm enough 1-year plan, even if you're a bigger company? I mean, we work with like Fortune 500, and they're, switching to 3-month kind of quarterly approach in many cases. It's like, it's very hard. And so the innovation, the ability to innovate. And about what is innovation, right? Like, I've spent like half a year trying to, because it's just such a buzzword and it has so many
Uh-huh.
meanings. And should we even use this word or not? And then I just managed to distill it to innovation being the ability to see what is and to improve it, right? And so and the improvement can mean adaptation as well, right? Like, when things are changing, you kind of like improve the way you function as an organization, what you offer to customers, whatever it would be. You are able to stay in the market. Firstly, super important now, because a lot of companies will go out of business now and are already going out of business. And the second thing is outcompete. But in order to outcompete, you need to sort of build this like team of sports people. And so now, saying I'm like too tired to innovate is kind of like I'm too tired to go to the gym once a week, right? And many people would be, but as a leader of an organization, as someone building this team, or team of teams, really, if it's a bigger one, do you want you want your teams to have this fitness, right? You want them to be fit in order to outcompete others, right? It's extremely important today. And um and so um the question is, like, how do you maintain people's habit? How do people's
Uh-huh.
practice? And so one thing is that what I said is like this curve of, like, at first people don't really want to do it, and then they warm up to the idea because they are celebrated. And what we do internally, and I encourage everyone who uses Leap to do that, is we offer everyone a full day off on us after the 3 months, right? So the one cycle of Leap is 12 weeks long, and we offer basically a day off, a paid day off. You can just take it, book it right after, and that's your celebration, right? If you participate, and that's for every participant. The cost of it, when you think about the outcomes, is actually very negligible. And now the best thing I think about Leap, and it's been basically, and that's why a framework is needed, and that's why a very rigorous framework is needed. It's because this can be a very time-consuming exercise. If you let people roam free, then you need something like 20% at Google, which is a very high cost, right, to an organization that doesn't print money out of ads. And at most organizations, it's not possible to offer people a day a week to innovate, right?
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
even worse, it becomes something to do on top of your work. And so it becomes something, okay, you need to deliver on your whatever OKRs you've got, or what would that be? And then you have to contribute, right? Many organizations have those like nightly meetings, or extra rewards, and there is like some kind of $1,000 if you come up with an idea, but you work overtime essentially. Now, what we propose, and that's based on, I didn't invent this, this is just distillation of other models that work, is inviting those people to spend only 1 hour per week doing this. Only 1 hour and no more time, right? And because they already know, either they realize it or not, but they already know what can be improved. And what they need to do is just kind of vocalize it and bring it to the table. And then the system sort of takes care of the rest. And so what you what you get is a state where, I would say, the second most important kind of condition for innovation to happen is met. The first one is to have a leader who pushes something like that forward. So the first condition is you need to have someone who will start and keep going, right? Push it. An executive sponsor, often a CEO, or an empowered enough kind of COO, or someone who is there to kind of push this organization, has a full mandate, support of the board, and so on to keep going, right? That's, if you don't have that, then your organization will just not become innovative and probably in the age of AI go out of business, right? That's just how we see things happen. But if you have the leader, then the second most important thing is to start and not stop. And the start part is not that hard because there's excitement. Let's go. Okay, there's a new tool and framework and something. What is this Matt Leta saying on this podcast? How about we try it? And then, 2 months later, we were like, well, we're not exactly seeing results yet. Where do we go? And Leap usually shows real tangible results within 3 to 4 months, depending, how quickly you can see the quick wins to emerge. But the real sort of 10x, 100x, real results, right? That's 18 months maybe, right? Because it takes time to get people going, get the technology implemented, and so on. And so to keep going and keep generating those opportunities, reassessing things and innovating, the important thing is not to stop. And now it is only 1 hour per week for everyone involved, because it's really hard to say, I didn't have 1 hour last week. When someone goes like, guys, sorry, I didn't have time. It's like, you didn't have 1 hour. Right? And there is a whole framework that I provide, how to block it in people's calendars for 3 months ahead of time. There's like a whole, schedule that comes with it. And that's what sort of addresses this fatigue. So, in essence, you kind of sign up people for the gym and
For 1 hour a week.
and reward them for attending.
So you say on one hand that this is a 12-week process. Is that correct in terms of this framework? But at the same time, we're also saying don't stop. So would that mean that you would start another 12-week process or go on as long? Okay, so then this is I'm curious then if you've got these great ideas, and I kind of liken it to, it's a bad analogy, so apologize, a great strategic plan, right? There could be some wonderful ideas that come out of a strategy session. But of course, as you know, and a lot of people who are listening to this know, that most strategic plans do not get implemented. I think 70% of them I heard at one point. If that's the case, then it sounds like the hard part is really the implementation of the great idea. So how do you help people go from ideation, this great idea, which may have taken 12 weeks and you got this a lot of great engagement, to now we have to operationalize it. And now we have to cascade it to the rest of the organization. And now we're getting involved with process. We're getting involved with change management, behavior management outside of that cohort that created these great ideas. Do you address that? And if so, how?
Yeah. So the week 6 is evaluation, right? And the E of Leap is evaluate. And during that time, the group evaluates and sort of sorts out the opportunities. Usually there are around 25, sometimes there are 20, sometimes there are 30, but 25 is the recommended number, so 5 per person. And then they are evaluated on a number of agreed criteria. There's a whole framework to do it fast, and much, much, much faster than it would be using other approaches, and therefore you can do it in just 1 week. And the book addresses that as well, what happens if you need more time and so on. But usually can happen in just 1 week, which is a huge time saver. And what you end up with is kind of like a rated list of 25. Usually around 10 of them are small things that we call quick wins, things that can be done within a month, right? And they can be delegated to someone. It's a small improvement, like, adding some plugin to a tool or enabling communication between 2 departments, or what would that be? Things that can be done without change management and implemented pretty quick. And then only 1 out of this entire exercise becomes number 1, which is opportunity of focus. And it doesn't mean that this is the one that got highest rated, but the one that has the highest buy-in. And halfway through the leap, the entire exercise switches from we look for ideas to, like I mentioned at the beginning, we communicate. So almost everything we do from that point is creating that strategic plan and then actually making progress in P. But the whole purpose of that is to communicate to any stakeholders that there be, CFO or general manager or board or whoever is there to be approving budgets, go ahead, to produce enough materials, proof of potential success, indication of ROI, and even prototype to be able to create like a package that then you show, hey, there is an outcome that, if we stay on it, if we make it a project, then within X time, we recommend for 3 more. This is like phase 1, then the leap, and then there are 3 more phases. So within 9 months from that point, and within 12 months from that leap start, you actually have something done, right? And like a bigger change, bigger improvement within the organization. And then that
So it
follows the
sounds like your
concurrence.
process builds into your implementation is built into your lead process.
It follows. So every company has their own implementation approaches, right? So Leap itself doesn't tackle implementation because then you can go agile or delegate it or have
Right.
steering
Waterfall.
committee,
Yeah.
make decisions and then bring it to your internal tech team, or what would that be? The important thing is to drive the buy-in so that the budget for it gets unlocked. And so that's
Okay.
the effect of the 3 months, and then ideally project happens, and in many cases it happens. Now, the other thing that happens is you still have a list of 25 or so different opportunities that are fully documented. Each of them has problem statement, it has solution kind of concept, prototype idea, value that's clearly defined, and so on, right? And they all land in the database. And after, like you noted, after one leap ends, you can take a week of a break and start another leap. Or as I recommend, 2 leaps running at the same time if you're a bigger team. And
With
then
with the leap sessions, Matt, sorry for interrupting. With the leap
yeah,
sessions that you would have, you focus on a particular area, almost like let's create a problem statement
yeah,
and let's work on that versus something so big and amorphous we could cover everything and it kind of goes off on many different pathways. You're saying something that the group, the cohort that's working together on innovative ideas has
yeah,
got some sort of target in mind.
yeah, theme. Yeah, I call it a theme, and
Okay.
that's found in the first session of L, of Locate. And so there is like a
Okay.
theme that they work under, and it can be broader, can be narrow, and that they change. The important thing again is to start and not stop, and because the cost is marginal, you just keep going. And what that does is it generates all those ideas, and it kind of, in a way, it's a little secondary whether all of those projects get implemented. It's nice to have them, and implementation cost, build cost of, let's say it's the outcome is software in most cases. The cost of creating those things is going to zero, right? It's we can now build an app that would take 100 days before in 1 day today, right?
Right.
And
Right.
and of course that requires a lot of skill prep and experience, but it is possible, right? And we're still in the early days. So you can think of it like, the marginal cost of implementation of those solutions is going down, but they need to be good ideas. And over time, you create a database of a lot of those opportunities. I mean, we have hundreds internally, right? I know companies who are like now on like leap 10 and plus, right? And so have they have, whatever that would be, 250 plus opportunities documented. The magic of AI systems, and you can literally just plug in Perplexity to it. You don't even need to have anything super custom and fancy. You can have, sense making added to all of that, and you can then connect those opportunities together and so on. You've got like basically a lot of signals for how to drive roadmaps for your company going forward. That's one part. That's like outside of whether any of those projects got implemented. And the second part, that's perhaps most important, is all those people who took part in it, they now think like, oh, I'm I'm an innovator too. Yesterday I was an accountant, and and now I'm an innovator, right?
Yeah.
And so and that is incredibly important now, because we are seeing something that, like, as much as there was resistance to change in the past, Like in digital transformation, you mentioned change management and so on. I don't know, company wanted to roll out Salesforce, and people would suffer for 2 years, but eventually get used to it, and that continued from there. There was a resistance to change. They wouldn't want to use it, switch their models, give up data, fill out forms, whatever. But they were not getting potentially replaced by that form or that CRM, right? And right now, everyone in their mind has, okay, what if we actually enable our organization to become more AI powered? Then who knows? Maybe it's gonna take my job, right?
Right. So
And
innovation could be a threat for some based on how they see it.
yeah, we're seeing higher resistance to change among people now, and they don't want it. A lot of people are like there's a lot of like philosophy around it. It's like it's not right to use AI to do the work I
Mm,
have been doing, and
mm.
all this thinking is contrary to the interest of the organization, which wants to stay competitive, and it's really hard
Right.
if people are not embracing those things. And so this mindset change to I am also part of the solution is incredibly important, because it changes the teams, the workforce of a company, to become open to change because they are part of the change. And so
I
that, in a
love it.
sense, is like even more important than all the rest,
Yeah.
even though there are found opportunities, and of course they need to be done so that those people can also see that actually this time and effort didn't go and like nowhere. Things are happening. But primarily, I would say it's about the culture of change, building a culture of change throughout the fabric of the organization, and not centralized within a few people.
And I think it's also one of the byproducts is that this level of engagement from those who are actually going to be implementing the innovation itself, which,
Yeah,
as you said earlier, is incredibly, really powerful. You said earlier also, Matt, about the accountant in an organization that all of a sudden goes, "Hey, mate, gosh, I'm actually innovative. I didn't realize that
yeah,
before." Address the idea that some people might be having when they listen to this to say, I've been through so many different style assessments. There's Myers-Briggs, there's social agility, there's Kobe,
mm,
there's
yeah,
DISC, and they all sort of describe those sort of preferences that people have. And
yeah,
certainly there's probably one or two within a four different type model that says, this person is more focused on security and more focused on
mm,
data, more focused on looking in the past versus the future, AKA, they're not really
yeah, the natural.
comfortable being innovative, especially
Yeah.
if you take I love your definition of innovation as the ability to see what is and improve upon it. I wonder if you would also have the definition that would be the ability to see what isn't and create it.
Mm. But that's more like
Meaning,
invention, right? Yeah,
right. So I guess that is
yeah.
so I'm bringing in two different conversations at
Hmm.
once. Are we talking about something that already is, and is that what it's about, improving what we already have, or can that include invention? And if it is including invention, then I go back to my first comment around people who might not be able to, based on their preference, see what isn't yet because they're more focused on what is. So I'm sort of throwing two questions at you at the same time.
Yeah.
Are we focused
Well,
on invention or only focused on what is and improving what is? Let me just handle that first.
yeah, so actually at the beginning of the book, I discern between the meanings of innovation, invention, betterment, and
Mm,
transformation, and so on, like all the terms that are kind of like floating together and often are misunderstood. Um, and I draw a clear line,
okay.
between invention and innovation. Like you can, look at it as like, invention was like the first telephone, right? But then innovation was a smartphone. And
Right.
so it's a big leap from a phone to a smartphone. It's not necessarily an invention; it's an improvement. And those
Right.
those improvements can be substantial, right? Very substantial for a business,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't have to be like. I think like innovation is more like a startup thing, like thing coming out of a lab, and of course, many companies have their R&D departments and whatnot, and they try to introduce new products to the market. But this book is not really about that at all. It's the focus is how do we actually make our company outcompete in the age of AI? So how do
Mm,
we become ready, constantly readier? It's like an ongoing gym practice
Right.
to be able to embrace those new technologies as they come, and the faster and faster pace of change that we have, and how can we become like adaptable and also even lead with innovation in those times. So it's more so about this, like some people suggest this meaning of betterment, which is kind of just improvement, and there's a lot of hate for incremental innovation. People look down at it,
A lot of
but
hate, did you say?
I think so. Yeah, I think a
Yeah.
lot of people are like, "Oh, this is incremental. Like, free me from incremental innovation." But the truth is, that's for most companies, it's not only the only choice, because they might be disrupting themselves too much if they go the other way. But also, this is sufficient if you do it well, because
Mm.
if you keep improving, you will get you will if you get a high velocity of improvement, you will outcompete everyone, because it's very hard to do. And
100%.
like Microsoft is a great example,
100%.
right?
Oh,
Like, if you look at this, the chart, where like there was Balmer and then Satya Nadella. If you look at what happened, he introduced cyclical innovation, right? Into Fabric and connectivity between departments, all sorts of different things, cultural change within the organization. And then what you have is this hockey stick moment, and the and crazy outcomes, right?
right.
After what, 10 years or maybe 15 years of fairly flat or slow growth. And so yeah, so that's the effect. You don't need an
Understood.
invention then. And now
Well,
Microsoft, yes, is like doing quantum computing experiments and all sorts of things, but they're mostly just acquire teams and companies to push that forward.
so it really, really helps me in this conversation, that maybe it does for others, to hear your definition of innovation versus um, transformation or invention, for example. I mean, but I guess, tell me if I'm wrong, but if I'm in one of these cohorts and we're focusing on a particular problem statement and we're going to innovate on that, and my creative juices starts to flow and I got some ideas, and it's all about the volume of ideas, not the quality at this point, right? We're really thinking about
Right.
expanding the prefrontal cortex, getting both sides of the brain really kicking into gear here, about how can we improve what we already have. I would guess, Matt, that once in a while somebody comes up with an inventive idea
Yeah.
because of the fertile ground of the conversation. So what do you do with that? Say, great idea, that's an invention. Let's put that on, a flip
Yeah.
chart, and we'll come back to that later. Is that kind of how you handle that? And does that happen?
It happened to us, for example, internally. So like about a year ago, maybe, we looked at another thing that happens during this process is you look at similar ideas and tag them with each other, connect them with each other, kind of semantically. There's like a whole
Hmm.
way to do it. Like basically list similar ideas, or there's like a database I provide for free with this book, where you can just like tag things and they connect, and and so similarities emerge, and sometimes like a kind of super idea emerges, like something that is like, oh, we've got like 7 or 8 different ideas, opportunities, and they seem to be kind of, it could be one thing.
Right.
And so that's how our underlying AI framework for our company was born. And it was not like so much of like a kind of intellectual, oh yeah, we want to build this digital core this way, and we had an R&D process. It actually came from assembly of different needs, and we're like, wow, we can actually, they all connect. And so now my company is like, I guess, like AI native. It's a new term in like a truest sense, in a
Hmm.
way that like it has an AI and data system that's directly plugged into how everyone at the company works every day, all the time, right? And it's our own kind of like proprietary system, and that emerged from that, right? And that, I, I think that's it's kind of verging on an invention. Like, I think if
Yeah.
it's like shapes itself into kind of more of a thing, it really kind of is a product. We're not sure if we're ever gonna offer it as a product to others. We have some partnerships now with far bigger professional services firms in digital transformation to sort of help kind of reinvent them using this. But we yeah, it has
Okay.
emerged. So it can happen, and it can
Yeah.
become the opportunity focus. It's like in the evaluation step, you sort of decide between the group, and sometimes you pull in, stakeholders, even the CEO or whoever, to help weigh in. or external advisors. They're very useful sometimes to kind of bring outside perspective. And then you pick the opportunity, and maybe that opportunity is actually this multi-phase roadmap of rolling out something that is that invention. It just all depends on the
Yeah.
model, but I wouldn't say it's like the primary
Understood.
focus.
Yeah. It's got me thinking, like, I'm a constant idea guy. I have more ideas than I have a lifetime to go through them all. But I think, and more than
Yeah,
anything, I was thinking, like, is that really inventive or is that innovative? And I think
yeah,
as I'm talking to you, I think I'm more of an innovator because I'm seeing patterns and
yeah,
I can see how dots connect. And from that opportunity comes, but it doesn't
yeah,
necessarily mean it's a new dot. It just, I see the relationship between dots and I can
yeah,
see how they can be applied. So going back to your analogy here, or your idea that when these innovations come, and I could see in your model where you might evaluate, what's possible, right? You might do some sort of XY axis, like, low hanging fruit, where you say, well, let's take a look at the cost and the effort versus the impact. And if it's really, really high cost but low impact, maybe we won't do it. But if it's really, really high impact and low cost, maybe we should do it so we can implement it. But I still wonder about the role of the stakeholder, the role of the CEO, or the person who seems to be the sponsor for this. I would think that not only are they useful in terms of keeping this process going forward, but also as the ambassador for the ideas, so others in the organization could maybe adopt to it or consider it
yeah.
or implement it, because we've got some stakeholders that says, yes, I approve of this. We should move forward on it. Is that how that works? The role of the stakeholder, the role of the
Yeah,
executive sponsor.
they ultimately need to be a highly persistent person,
Hmm.
because it's hard to drive change, right? Like, nobody really wants change.
Right. Well, it's
People
it's
don't
a
like
lot of
change.
energy. It takes a lot of energy in your brain to
People
change.
don't like
Yeah.
change, and they have their own ideas for where things could go, right? And so it requires quite a bit of persistence and energy to push, and sort of like it becomes like the teams running with leaves sort of give that person just more ammunition to
Hmm.
be able to drive forward, to kind of keep winning this
Yeah.
battle, right? Because he gets all those prototypes and ideas and success stories and progress. And that's why the last part is progress. Spent 3 weeks literally just driving this forward, even though it was just found, so that it already is going. It's hard to stop when it's already going. And so and again, that's happening with minimum effort, right? And so it's something to just empower that person as well, make their life easier, because very often a company goes like, oh, we're not being innovative, because let's hire a chief innovation officer, and then
Exactly. And let's give it to them.
yeah,
It's so
yeah,
fascinating
or
you
like,
say that.
yeah,
You're so right on, because we sort of become specialists,
yeah,
and therefore that person is going to take care of this particular role, and innovation is that department. I don't know
yeah,
how many different companies, I can even think of a few right now, that have innovation as either part of their name or
yeah,
as a core value. And yet there's no process by which to be innovative, as far
yeah,
as I can tell, right?
yeah,
Other than, well, we have an open door policy. We would like to encourage all people to come to bring ideas to us, in a sense.
yeah,
So, go ahead, but there's no
yeah.
process to be able
This
to
is the
help
method.
people
Yeah,
work through that. So I'm assuming that you work with organizations to walk them through this process, and your book does that as well. Um, Tell us a little bit more about this new book you got coming up. How is it different? And kind of round out this conversation, if you would, is like how people can connect with you and follow what you're all about.
sure thing. Yeah, so firstly, I'm not like a consultant that builds that into companies.
Got
I
it.
wrote this book as a sort of self-help guide, and I spent like 18 months refining it with over 100 people. So it's not
Hmm.
just me. They're all listed in the book. Execs, consultants, thinkers, innovation leaders from companies as big as 300,000 people and as small as 10 people. And we've created this so that you can kind of like read it and run it with your team, and you don't actually need to pay someone like us to take it through, right? And
Understood.
because what we do is we build AI into into processes and into companies. And that is more of like transformation, if you will. Some people, we call it next gen digital transformation now. Some people call it AI transformation or whatnot, but we just feel like AI transformation is kind of, it's pointing to the wrong end, because that change that is required now for companies to really see really high ROI. I mentioned that earlier, but you can what would take 100 days before, you can do in one day in many cases, increasing amount of cases all the time. And we found that the time to the sort of time to creation of a solution can be on average like 10 times lower now. And time to change, time to bring in a team aboard can also be 10 times lower. But that requires a sort of thinking about an entire business logic stack. So thinking about people, the layer between them, which is software and data, and AI, which is now coming in. Whoever tries to just like bolt on AI or like, let's get our team, ChatGPT subscription or Perplexity or whatever, or even let's try to build like some solution that solves our decision-making approvals or distributes tasks better or whatever. We've seen hundreds of them. That is not going to give a really high result. You will not see, 2x, much less 10x or 100x ROI. What is needed is to look how do we really build it into the core of the business, and that requires thinking about the labor model. How do people work? What they require rewarded for? It requires looking at our data and software. How are they interoperable and open enough and connected? And then AI can actually function. Those agents, the buzzword of the decade, can actually come and work with us, right? And actually create incredible advantage. But all that work is required. And that's what the new book is about. The title is simply 100X. And it's an executive brief on getting high ROI on AI. And that's continuation of the same research. It's just a year after, because I finished writing that book, the previous book, like a year ago, but then it took a while to publish it.
Yeah.
And so I continued working on the same research, just going deeper. So I talked to 100 more people, collected over 1,000 more insights, analyzed it all, and kind of crunched it into this brief for leaders to understand what is needed to make their company truly AI powered and see something like 100x ROI on investment, which sounds crazy, absolutely possible.
It's a
yeah.
Go ahead. It's a great point. It's sort of like, if you don't need a hammer, then why do you have a hammer? If you don't even know how to use it, right? So like I'm doing a facilitation next week with a group, and I said, oh, we really want to, it's part of a kind of a ideation group that's coming together. Like, oh, we really want to talk about AI. And I'm thinking like, okay, we can talk about AI, but for what purpose? What is the reason for it? Let's locate the opportunity and then find the correct tool in order to create the 10x or the 100x. Last question, where can people find you on the web, LinkedIn, all those other places?
Super simple. Both books, all those links, LinkedIn and whatnot, are at leap.guide. You can also subscribe to our newsletter there. It just crossed 35,000 people and it keeps growing pretty fast. And they're primarily like change leaders within organizations. We share a lot of free outcomes of our research as well all the time, every week. But both of the books will be there, and the new one is now going to be in pre-sale. So if you catch it in pre-sale, then instead of $25, it's going to be, I think, only 99 cents. And so you can there is a link to grab it on pre-sale. It's just leap.guide, leap.guide. So no .com or anything like that. That's the whole URL, leap.guide.
Well, Matt, this has been really great. I've had thoughts for a long time about innovation, and I think you've clarified some things about certainly the difference between innovation and invention, and creating a process within an organization in order to build that discipline, that going to the gym reference that you made, that gets people not only able to come up with these new ideas that can create better execution on what they do, but also to your point, I think you really mentioned it, that the coalition or the distillation of all these people coming together creates a better culture of engagement. And because people want to feel like what their ideas that they have can make a difference. And I think this process really covers that. So thank you for your time. It's really been great to
chat with you. You can be very surprised. And but going back to hammers, before if you make people comfortable in a workshop, then you can get them the best hammers and they will do their best work, right? And the important thing is to think about the workshop, and how the hammers are used. And
well, keep up the good work. It's been great to talk with you.
Thanks so much, Dean. Appreciate
you bet.
Thank you for listening to Leadovation with Dean Newlund. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com, or check the show notes. Reimagine, facilitate, flourish. Transform your leadership success with Leadovation.